I've often said that Thriller Bark is a big turning point in the series because in One Piece, when we're first introduced to Devil Fruits for the most part, a lot of them are very practical. And by this point, we've seen all three types, but all three types have a lot of practicality in the way they are presented. So nothing seems weird yet. Nothing is too out of the ordinary. You have some very weird occurrences, but they are understandable. However, in Thriller Bark is where you get the truly weird powers. And from then on, powers only get weirder and weirder. Because in Thriller Bark, you get situations like Brook or Moria or Perona or Kuma. Today, we'll be talking about Moria and Kuma because out of the powers shown during that arc, theirs are some of the most complex because they do nearly the same thing. And there's some funny in-universe stuff about that. But Moria, of course, has the Shadow Fruit, and Kuma has the Paw Fruit. The reason why these two are similar is because they can turn concepts into matter. With the Shadow Fruit, it has the power to turn shadows into matter. And with that designation of power, there are so many things oddly attached to it. For example, when a shadow is removed from a body, that body does not interact with light the same way, so it no longer has a reflection, and the person in question no longer shows up in mirrors or photographs. Then, this is the first time in which a person can be obliterated by the effect of a Devil Fruit, potentially, because if an affected person steps out into the sun without a shadow, they will be vaporized. This is the first time erasure appears in One Piece, which is quite devastating. Also, oddly too, regaining a shadow while in the process of being vaporized restores the body from vaporization, because we see this at the end of the Thriller Bark arc and how once the various Straw Hats get their shadows back, they recover from being nearly half vaporized. So I find that very interesting too, that the shadow itself has the properties to heal the body from the reality bending effects of the Shadow Fruit. Quite odd, but it's fascinating. But then, of course, we have all the mechanics of the shadows themselves. If you put them inside of a corpse, that corpse becomes a zombie. However, if a living person absorbs the shadows of another living person, they gain several attributes of that person, like swordsmanship and whatnot. With that being said, this is the first time, too, that so many different Devil Fruits have so many additional effects. I think the only odd man out in this arc who's pretty par for the course in terms of Devil Fruit powers is Absalom with the Clear Fruit, because everybody else, Perona included, is quite ridiculous in just how many powers they have. But getting back on track, let's talk about Kuma. And of course, you know, Kuma has the Paw Fruit, which allows him to have these paw pads on his hands. Speaking about hands, I'm pointing at you. Yeah, you watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you are enjoying what I'm talking about so far. Thank you so much. It's greatly appreciated. But getting back to the Paw Fruit. The Paw Fruit has the ability to give the user the power to deflect anything with the paw pads on their hands. Now, at first glance, this seems like a power like, say, the Chop Fruit, the Gum Fruit at the time, or the Smooth Fruit, in which there's some sort of physical representation of the ability on the user's person all the time. However, the Paw Fruit is even weirder because we find out, based on the description of the fruit, that the description of the power is quite literal, in which, yes, Kuma can deflect anything, and that includes abstract concepts like pain and memory, because during the events of the arc, he actually is able to remove the pain out of Luffy and turn that pain into a physical object in the form of a paw bubble. Then that paw bubble can be interacted with another individual as they can put their hands inside the bubble and actually feel the sensations that Luffy was feeling during the course of the arc, which is completely out of the box, but it does make the power very similar to that of the Shadow Fruit, because both characters have the ability to touch and interact with abstract concepts and turn them into matter. It's also quite interesting that other individuals can interact with these abstract constructs, turn into matter, and then be affected by those abstract constructs in particular ways. We see Luffy absorb 100 shadows and become a hulking monster. We see Zoro absorb all of Luffy's pain and feel all of what he was feeling throughout the course of the arc. So it's quite interesting that when we get the introduction to truly magical fruits in the series, 2 of the 4 powers present in the arc are very similar to one another. Now, another small thing that's quite similar between the Paw Fruit and the Shadow Fruit is that they do allow for a form of faux teleportation. It's not true teleportation like the Warp War Fruit, but it's, I guess, a transportation ability, because with Kuma, he can deflect himself at a high speed and it looks like he's teleporting, but he's just moving very, very fast. With Moria, he has a very similar ability in which he can swap places with his own shadow, whom he calls Doppelman. And the swapping, much like the deflection of Kuma's ability, seems to be instantaneous. So I just find that very interesting. With that being said, give me your thoughts and tell your friends about Polypede What's